state visit of King Charles to France has been postponed. The French and British governments took the decision following a phone call between President Emmanuel Macron and the King. This comes after widespread protests over the country's pension reforms. The Interior Ministry says more than 450 protesters were arrested and 440 members of the security forces injured. More than 1 million people took to the streets of France on Thursday to protest against the retirement age being raised from 62 to 64. Let's get more on this with our correspondent Charlotte Gallagher. This has only just broken in the last few minutes, Charlotte.
It hasn't. We've actually just got a statement from Buckingham Palace saying the King and Queen Consort's state visit to France has been postponed, but they greatly look forward to visiting France as soon as dates can be found. This was the King's first state visit. It was really important to the royal family that this went incredibly well. It was also going to be the first time a British monarch had addressed senators in France. It was going to be incredibly important. And I think that obviously with the situation, with the violence, the last thing the royal family would have wanted, and of course the French government would have wanted, was the visit to be overshadowed with violence. So I think that it will be postponed. It will happen at a later date. They are still going to go to Germany. This was a visit to France and Germany. They're still going to go to Germany. That will go ahead. But the French part of the visit has been postponed.
And just remind us, Charlotte, of why this has been the case, because the back story to it is nothing to do with relationships between France and the UK, is
it? The protests that are going on in France at the moment, nothing to do with the UK, nothing to do with the King, nothing to do with the King's visit. They're about President Macron's proposals to raise the retirement age in France. And he's gone through with that. It's passed through Parliament, but it didn't have a vote. People in France are incredibly angry about this. We've seen widespread protests, trains cancelled, public transport cancelled, fires on the streets of Paris. You saw that policemen were injured, protesters were injured, arrested. And I think it would have just looked really bad had the King got caught up in those protests, had it affected the visit. You can imagine the photos and videos that we would have seen. And it may have been that the French police, French security services thought they couldn't control everything on this trip. So for safety and also for public relations, it's been postponed at this point.
Charlotte, for the moment, thank you very much, Charlotte Gallagher. Well, we're joined now live from Paris by Georgina Wright, a resident senior fellow and director of the Europe programme at the think tank Institut Montaigne. Georgina, thank you very much for joining us. Just tell us how important this visit was going to be for France and also the UK.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, this was huge. It follows, obviously, the Franco-British summit that happened 2 weeks ago, where we saw sort of a new dynamic in the relationship, this willingness to kind of turn the page of acrimony and really sort of be ambitious about what these two countries could do together. And the fact that the King chose France as his first sort of state visit was really meaningful to France, but also meaningful to the UK. So I think there was a lot of hope and excitement, frankly, around this visit. But of course, the situation in France is very difficult. I mean, we have seen widespread protests for weeks, but it seems that the anger has just amplified. And, even yesterday we saw some protesters setting the mairie of Bordeaux alight, and that's one of the cities that the King was due to visit. So I think the situation is very tense, and it does, in that context, make sense that it was postponed.
You mention the enmity, the animosity at times that there has been, even in recent years, between France and the UK. Where is this impetus coming from to try to move on from that?
It's a really good question. I think first is pragmatism. The UK and France share many of the same instincts. They share much of the same vision of the world. It makes sense for the two nuclear powers of Europe and the two largest military powers of Europe to be working closer together. But also, I think the context that we're in, we're seeing war return in Europe. Again, it makes sense for them to work together. And then also, I think as Brexit is sort of left behind post-COVID, there's a willingness to reconnect societies and reconnect governments. So it's really within that context that there was willingness on both sides to really strengthen that relationship.
So what's your expectation then of how cautiously France will proceed with trying to rearrange this state visit?
I think probably all the caution that they need. I mean, this wasn't a decision that would have been taken lightly. I think there was a lot of excitement in France. I mean, the King's visit was much more of a source of excitement in France than the Franco-British summit, which sort of gathered President Macron with Prime Minister Sunak. So I think they will want to make sure that actually the visit can happen peacefully, that this is an opportunity to talk about broader relations beyond politics, about sort of relations between societies, to kind of highlight projects, whether it's tackling climate change or sort of strengthening our action to preserve the environment, that are happening on both sides. So there's a willingness to kind of highlight all these things. You can't do that when the country is facing so many sort of protests and violent clashes.
Georgina Wright from the Institut Montaigne, thank you very much for joining us.